it's not even close to being a chair that anyone else that we haven't sat in a sense because who wants to? But he kept that because I'm sure it was his lucky spot. The other story that I want to tell about that was we used to have Padres season tickets when we were younger, and I love going to the games. We always sat in the very top possible row you could ever sit. I'm sure because they were the cheapest. And I always brought my gloves and I'm going to catch a foul ball this time. I really want to. So once we went with my cousins Antonia and Mikey, and I really liked that story because they were about my age, and we were all maybe like 10 at most. And my dad's like, it was so embarrassing going with the three of you. I never want to do that again. Because the whole time we were yelling, pitcher's got a big butt. So he said, I thought you were going to get on the TV, and that would have been so embarrassing. So I don't think that ever happened again after that. But he loved his kids' books. He loved learning. He loved Chinese food. So only the Chinese food back east, not here. And it was to such a point that we would go back for holidays. So for Thanksgiving we would go, and he would go to my mom's family who would host us for Thanksgiving. He would say, okay, so we're going to be here for dinner. Don't be offended because I only want to eat Chinese food while I'm here. I do not want to eat anything else that I don't care about. So don't be offended if I don't eat because I'm eating Chinese before and I'm eating Chinese after I leave. And that was his attitude about the Chinese food. He loved dancing. He would always be dancing. Even when we didn't want him to be dancing, he'd just be dancing. Even when there was no music on, he'd be dancing. He loved Hollywood. He said if he would do it again, he would really want to be in Hollywood. I know one of the things, a few years ago, he took an acting class. And I don't know what got him started on the acting class, but I do know when I really realized he was actually in an acting class. Me and my boyfriend Taylor used to work in Balboa Park. So Taylor was coming into work one day, and all of a sudden I get a text, and he goes, I was just walking into work, and your dad was in this big group, and he was doing a bunch of arm gestures. I think he's in an acting class. And it was hilarious. Another photo I totally wish I had, because that would be great.
We later learned that he was pretending to be a strip of bacon fried.
which he demonstrated to us later, so that was fun. So, Brockton. That was one of his biggest loves. He grew up there, and it was in Massachusetts, for those of you who don't know. It was in Massachusetts, and it sounded like the amazing town that you would want to grow up in. Because it sounded like such a nice community, and just nostalgic type of community that you would want to be part of. And it's a little different now, just because you need the right type of leadership. And he understood that. If he cared about family a little less, I think he would have been great in that type of setting. But it wasn't as nice as you would want it to be. So knowing that, I want to go into the one story about Brockton. So he was part of a group called Toastmasters, and in that you give speeches. So he would always give the type of speeches that would be on topics that he really cared about, that was close to his heart. So I know he talked about the kids' books, he talked about our dog Lucy, he talked about, I know one of the joke ones was why it's better to have a dog than have a wife. So those type of ones. He also talked about Brockton for at least one of them that I know. And it was recently, and we were laughing about it after because he practiced. And he practiced with us, that is. And we were laughing about it after because he's like, yeah, well, one of the people in the group after said, oh, we're going to go to Boston in the next few weeks, we're going to visit Brockton. So he said, so we were laughing because we're like, it's not really a tourist attraction. But it's nice if you're from there, and it could be nice, but it's not that type of town. And then he goes, wouldn't that be just great if he got shot? He's like, I'd never be able to show my face again at Toastmasters. We had a good laugh after that, because it just was fun. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about things that he loved. He loved to laugh, all the time. No matter where we went or what we were doing. That's why it's hard to really think of specific stories and give a eulogy, because we're always laughing. Every story is a good story. And that's really how he liked to live his life, having fun. So I'm glad he did. So now, I'm going to invite a few people up. And I was having one person go first, but I know they mentioned that they do not want to go first. So the first person I want to have come up, and he has been really nice in our life. We were trying to decide, and I think it's been over 10 years since we've known him. We were trying to figure out how long, because I was like, oh, maybe like 4 years. But he's been a really nice person in our life. And my dad, they met at a networking meeting, and the only reason I'm giving such a long introduction, because I'm not for family, so sorry. I'm just going to say niece, cousin, and then go from there. But I just want you to know, he was a really great person. They met at a networking meeting, and I know Matt, who's going to be the one coming up, is a personal trainer, so he did that for my dad, and my dad business coached for him, and they really enjoyed the relationship they had. So if you'd like to come up, Matt.
Thank you. That's really great. When you hear you talk about him, and I was like, oh, I know about that, because Ron talked a lot. I mean, he loved to tell you stories. And I love to listen. I used to laugh. I mean, when I was with him, I laughed so hard all the time. She did a great job. I don't know how she did. It's funny, Ron brought me to Toastmasters, and gosh, I would get up there, shaking and wobbling back and forth, and he used to film me, and then he'd write down, and he'd be like, every time I said, and I come back, and I go, what's this? And I'd be like 50 things, like 1,500 different notches. Well, that's how many times you said, I was like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to speak. So, and he's been filming. I remember him filming me, and I look up, and he's in the back room filming me while I'm doing a presentation. And he's filming, all he's down. And I used to be so nervous to see him back there do that, because I know that I'm saying chicken, walk back and forth. But I had a lot of fun. And like she said, I met Ron 10 years ago, and I was like, I can't even believe it. I was like, 10 years ago, I met him at a networking meeting at the Broken Yoke. And I remember the day, like it was yesterday. Excuse me. And part of it, we hit it off very quickly after we met. Right, because we were both Italian, and he loved being Italian. But it was amazing how fast we became friends, and it was because of Ron. He spoke to you in a way. I can just hear him now. You didn't practice enough. If you didn't practice enough, you wouldn't be crying. I practiced. But as she said, he became my business coach, and I became his personal trainer. And I mean, sometimes we worked out every day. He would drive all from La Mesa all the way up to Santa Luz at like 4:30 in the morning, and we meet and we work out, and he was so funny working out. We had a blast working out. And then afterwards, we'd sit and talk about business, and we talked for hours. I mean, I go, how am I running a business? We were here for 4 hours talking. Like, this is crazy. Like, we just sit, we talk about stories about his mom and everything, and just everything. Pia and Alex and Ellen. He told me so many stories about Ellen. He was pretty amazing. Ron was a conversationalist. He could just sit and talk to you. He was amazing. We talk about business and money and religion and politics. shouldn't be talking about that, but we did. We talked, he had a beautiful mind, you know. The way he thought, it's amazing. He was so smart. He was witty. And like Pia said, he's just a thinker, man. He was thoughtful when he thought about things that you'd be like, how did you think of that? You just sit back and go, what? That's amazing that you can come up with that. But the one thing when I really look back on, and Ron talked a lot about was family. And when she said that, I go, that's what I wrote, Mi Familia. That's Ron. He talked about Ellen and Pia and Alex all the time. And I probably know more about them than they ever, can imagine.
Not that much about you.
The one story that he told to me that really hit home is, I think it was one time you guys went there was a wedding, and you guys didn't have enough money, you scraped money together. Like, it was the most important thing in the world was family to him. And they didn't have the money to do it, but somehow they scraped the money together to go back to this wedding. And I don't remember exactly when it was or whatever, but it made me realize, because I'm from back east, I'm from West Virginia, and I didn't always go back because they had the money, and we can't. He's like, I don't care if it's your last dime. Get it and go. One moment that my wife Maria and my daughter, Hayden's not here, we'll always cherish because they invited us over. It was during Christmas time, and we spent not Christmas Day, but like around Christmas time with them. And we made pasta visual from the cookbook. We'll always remember that. He just made us laugh. I can see Ellen sitting there, and he just talking, and we're laughing and cracking up, and he just kept talking, And I'll never forget that time we spent together. Pia talked about his books and his paintings, and they were very important to him. And I think it was because he did it with his family. He involved everybody, he involved Alex, and he had pictures of people and how he thought of them. He even had me in the books a couple times, and it just cracked me up. It was a blast. He was a riot. But I think that's why it was most important to him to do that, because the paintings and the books were something he did with his family. And I wrote, I think about Ron, and I always smile when I think about him. I think about Brockton because he talked about Brockton all the time too. He loved Brockton. I know about the shoe factory, so all the things that he said, I was like, oh yeah, but he called it, it's the city of champions. That was the thing, and it was just one of those things that it really meant a lot to him when he talked about Brockton, being the city of champions. And there was one time he told me his first business was he used to sit up in his window, his bedroom, and he had an open window, and he'd have a bucket, and he'd slide the bucket down to his friends that had fireworks in it, and they'd pick out the fireworks they want, put the money in the bucket, and he'd pull the bucket back out. That was his first business. It's like, he made more money than me back then doing that than I make now. So he was very good at it.
Hey Matt, one correction to that story. He would never put the firecrackers in the bucket first until he collected them.
Oh yeah. He was talking about bending the spoons. We used to go to the steak and what's that place? The steak and eggs place. Steak and eggs. We used to sit there talking, and we'd eat, and we'd have 45 cups of coffee, and it'd be 4 hours. We're sitting there. We're like, it's lunchtime. What the heck are we doing? And we'd sit. We go to leave, and I go, there'd be 5 spoons bent in half. I was like, what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he just laughed. It's so funny, I was like, oh my gosh, they're never gonna let us come back in here. Quit doing that. But they never said anything, so that was cool. Ron was the second person I called. I called my mom first after my daughter Presley was born. He was the second person I called, and he's the first person to show up to the hospital.